Hey guys, hey, we've been really pushing forward with our discussion on digital dementia, and so as we kind of finish up this week, and I'm looking forward to next week, I'm going to really try to pile quite a bit of information into this webinar because I really want to start moving forward next week with techniques and tips and kind of how do we overcome this digital dementia? How do we prevent it? How do we protect ourselves? More importantly, how do we protect our kids? So, we're kind of coming to the crest of the hill. We're getting through all the kind of the background science behind it. We've been talking a lot about the negative aspects of technology and things, and so next week we're going to come to the peak of the hill and we're going to start to coast on home on what we are actually going to do about it. But before we get there, there's one more topic that I really have to cover, and it's really two or three topics in one. So I'm going to try to cover it relatively quickly, as fast as I can. It's one of those difficult subjects to talk very quickly about, but one of the things we started with as we started down this digital dementia pathway, which is, of course, dementia-like symptoms in primarily adolescents. But one of the things that we didn't really touch on in the beginning, we talked about how technology tends to stimulate the back part and the lower parts of our brain down into those primal, behaviors of anger, aggression, reproduction, just kind of those basic primal things, right? And it turns off our logic centers, right? And so we already discussed that a little bit. Today, I want to talk a little bit about left side versus right side stimulation as we relate to the brain. And in the back of your mind, what I want you also to understand is a lot of times with ADD and ADHD, and I'm not going to dive much into that in today's topic, but with ADD, ADHD, it's a lot of times this left-right communication issue that's occurring. So you can kind of keep that in the background as we kind of talk through this one as well. But in neuroscience, one of the common sayings is stuff that fires together, wires together. And what that means is when we do certain things at the same time, those neural connections tend to get stronger, okay? Um, you know, and so that's what we're going to kind of as a base that you need to understand is stuff that comes together. Typically it gets stronger and reinforced. The more we do something, the better we get at it, right? And so in our brain, we have a part that's called the amygdala. It doesn't really matter, but we have a left side and a right side of that. And our left side is more of a pleasure side of the brain. It's where happy memories tend to reside. It's where creativity tends to reside. And the right side is more of a fear base. It's more of a survival side, if you will. When we talk about the amygdala, it's more that sympathetic, that fight or flight response. And so when we look at technology, it's not just the technology. A lot of times it's the content of that technology, right? Like we can use technology to learn a lot of things and it really helps with our IQ. But one of the things that it does is we kind of start to tie some of this together a little bit is it turns off our logic centers a lot of times. We don't have to think through the problem. We have technology that can give us an answer without having to be creative, without having to think logically through the problem. And it also starts to downregulate our emotional intelligence. So technology has actually been shown to improve somebody's IQ, their intellectual intelligence or the intellectual quotient, but it also has been shown to lower their EQ, their emotional, their ability to connect socially with people, because it's turning off this logic center. But anyway, back to the amygdala a little bit. Amygdala. When we stimulate the right side of that, like I said, that's more the fear-based side of things. And when we think about what's on, TV or social media, it's certainly slanted towards negativity, right? Whether it's violence or, the social media, stuff, especially right now during the situation that we're in with the coronavirus. It's really designed to create fear in people. And then when we look at social media, especially from maybe a teenage girl standpoint, this and boys too, this fear of not being enough or not measuring up because we see all these people having these perfect lives out there. And so it creates this anxiety within people. It creates this fear. one of the statistics that was certainly shocking to me as I went through this digital dementia series is that 1 in 3 girls nowadays are diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. Almost 50% of all teenagers have some diagnosable brain disorder, and that trend is skyrocketing. And the fear is over the next decade that number may be almost 90%. 90% of kids may have some diagnosable brain disorder by the time they're 18, and that's my kids' generation. That's my kids that are going to be in that timeline, and that certainly scares me. But when we're stimulating that fear-based side of the brain, kind of getting back to that again, it creates more volatility in our whole environment. It creates a stress environment. And if you've been to any of my webinars, you know that stress has a whole myriad of effects, both physiologically, structurally, just entire inflammation, just all throughout the body. And so one of the things that we also need to understand with technologies is not only just turning off this prefrontal cortex, but it's driving and strengthening. Again, the brain is a muscle, and the more we use it, the more it's driving this anxiety side of the brain, this fear-based mechanism within us. And just socially, I think we're really kind of seeing that in society, right? We have so much fear in our society right now. We have so much anxiety. And part of that, I wonder, is not just necessarily because of the times, but it's because of all of these interactions kind of coming together with our interaction with technology that is really just kind of pushing us further along into that direction. And so this was kind of the I don't know that this was necessarily the most important, but this is where we landed at the top of our mountain. There's a few other things I'll probably bring up as we start talking about tips and techniques to kind of overcome digital dementia and how are we going to live with technology and some of those things. And that's what's coming next week. So I know I covered a lot, and I know this one's a little longer than some of the others, and I apologize for that. But I just really want to kind of start to move forward and really get to some of the good stuff, right? Like all of this stuff it's not good. We're talking about a lot of bad stuff that's happening with technology. But we need to start talking about some of the good stuff, right? And what's our next step, right? And so I hope you tune in next week because we're really going to start hitting that hard. And I think you're going to find a lot of fun and interactive tips with that. Like I said, I stole a lot from these 70 experts that I was able to listen to, and little tidbits from each one. And so we're just going to start plowing through some of those and kind of move forward. So I want to thank you guys for your time. Stay healthy, stay well. Like us on Facebook, like us on YouTube, share with others. I just really think this information is important to get out to everyone. Thanks again.